Okay, that's interesting. A hydrogen gas balloon. Welcome, Endeth. Congrats on getting first. Ugh. Oh, captions are now enabled for your clips. Oh, that's great. Let's think about Pierre Blanchard and Dr. John Jeffries crossing the English Channel, France, in a hydrogen balloon. If you recall in The Mummy, they used the hydrogen balloon to travel from England to Egypt. So, that's always possible. That was considered futuristic back then. But anyway, American folktales. I was so close to just wanting to kind of phone in this one because I saw something that I will very likely get to tonight. And oddly enough, I think it might be in public domain. I would have to double check it. It's later copyright 1936. So it's almost something I could have used music for, but I didn't notice it was going to happen until I looked over the book to see what I was going to do tonight. So yeah, weird things may still happen. Let's see if I can... No, it does not look like it. Okay, no, the song is still under copyright. Darn. I guess I can't use the music for it. I will just have to sing it by myself. Which is scary enough as it is, because I'm going to have to be singing it myself. And there's nothing extra on the screen. Not at all. You don't see anything. Nope. Nothing here to see. Nothing at all. Nope. Nothing here. But yeah, let's see. I'm not sure. So apparently, Magarac in Slavic means jackass. You saw nothing. Not a thing. I'd say it was... I did not have time to put a lot of forethought into things tonight, so that's the closest thing I have to what I might use. I don't know. Haven't decided yet. And of course, no cats are wanting to use the bed, so no cats on camera anymore. Because apparently it's only a good place to sleep when they want to be warm and not when they want to be cold. Right now they'd rather be cold because, no, summer. I'm forgetting something else to do. To mute my front door camera because I don't need to be interrupted by the sound of wind chimes. I can distract by those enough as it is. Yeah. Reading. Still in American folklore. Still in the section. Well, I'm going to finish this section tonight. Called Miracle Men. And we'll be getting into. Let's see. What's the next section called? Patron Saints. So yeah, I'll be leaving section 4 and leaving section 5 and going into section 6. And there's a Mankey in chat, should anyone need a Mankey. No spanking it, please. Not during stream. So yeah, let's see. It's 9:06. I guess I could start the reading. I don't know. Can't really think of anything else to update people on. I think Kel is still cycling through my ads. I did forget to change her settings. So let me. Okay. Reporter's fine. Google Monarch, not so much. Someday I will get around to using a different system. But I have to figure out the system I want to use before I can change it, so there's that. Okay, but yeah. American Folklore, we've got 2 more people left in Miracle Men. Then we can start talking about actual historical figures that got turned into sensationalist ideas. So, just a bit. Maybe. Let me. Okay. So our first person for the night, we're going to talk about Joe Magarac. The Saga of Joe Magarac, Steelman. Not Iron Man, Steelman. While working in the steel mills along the Monongahela Valley of Pennsylvania, I often heard of one of the many Slavs who worked the mills call one of his fellow workers Magarac. No one literally translated the word Magarac means jackass, but known also from the tone of voice and the manner in which it was used, that it was seldom used derisively. I questioned my hunky liverman to its meaning as understood by the hunky workers. He gave me a vivid explanation. He said, Magarac, that it's the man who just lost like Jackie Jonkos. That is man's what just like to eat it and work it, that's all. Pointing a finger towards another of his race, a huge hunky by the name of Mike, who was walking on the open hearth, yelled, Hey, Magarac! At once, Mike's thumbs went to his ears, and his palms outspread, his hands waved back and forth, while he brayed lustily with the best imitation of a donkey that he could give. See, my loverman said, there's Magarac. That is Joe Magarac for sure. They both laughed and spoke in their mother tongue, which I did not understand. It was evident enough that there was some definite reason for the use of the word, and obviously that reason was, to their way of thinking, very humorous. By working for a considerable number of years with a hunky on my either side, by sitting many evenings in their homes, and since turning my thoughts to writing, by spending a good deal of my time with him, I have been fortunate enough to hear considerably more about the Mr. Joe Magarac. I find that Joe Magarac is a man living only in the imagination of the hunky steel worker. He is to the hunky what Paul Bunyan is to the woodsman, and old Stormalong is to the man of the sea. With his active imagination and his childlike delight in tales of greatness, the hunky has created stories with Joe Magarac as a hero that may in the future become folklore of our country. Conceived in the minds of hunky steel mill workers, he belongs to the mills as to the furnaces and roll mills. Although the stories of Joe Magarac are sagas, they have no tangible connection so far as I have been able to find with the folklore of any other countries which sent the hunky to these United States. It seems that the hunky, with the same adaptability, has made him into the best workers within our shores, has created a character, and has woven about him a legend which admirably fits the environment in which he, the hunky, has been placed. Basically, the stories of Joe Magarac are as much a part of the American scene as steel itself. I did not hear the story which I have set down here as accurately as I have been able at one time. Some of it I heard in the mill, some of it I heard it while sitting on the hill above the mill on pleasant Sunday afternoons. Most of it was sitting in the Agnes's kitchen with hunky friends at my side and well-filled tin cups of prune jack before us. The saga of Joe Magarac is more typical of the hunky than any tale or incident or description I might write. It shows his sense of humor, his ambitions, his love of his work, and in general shows what I know the hunky to be, a good-natured, peace and home-loving worker. Maybe you'll get it next time. One time long ago, maybe 100 or 200 years, there was living in Hunky Town Steve Mestrovich. Steve, he worked by open hearth and have a daughter, Mary. Oh my, Mary was pretty girl. She have big blue eyes, hair's yellow like hot steel, hands so like ladylike, and big strong teeth. She was prettier than the hunky girls from the place, and all fellows that work it were from mill commit around and say it for Steve. Maybe pretty soon you be plenty good thing Mary gonna catch booze band. Then Steve, he always laugh and he says, "Go on home, little mans. Mary no gonna marry someone like you who cannot catch much steam this time. Mary gonna marry one of the strongest mans what ever lived, you betcha." Mary say nothing. She just sit around and hope that pretty soon men's will be right to commit, for she was 17-year-old already and no lack the business to wait around. Steve gets sick too from wait around, nobody commit. Steve said, "What the hell's kind of business is that? I catch best young girls than anybody. She pretty like hell, and one's man. She wanna be good for mans and just stay home and raise kids and say no nothing. That's all. And by gods, I catch $200 I give myself a wedding present, and I no finds man for it. By gods, I think gon' have party this time and ask everybody commit, and then we see who best man's for Mary. You damn right." So, old woman's next Sunday we gonna have party. You make it plenty prune jack, and I gone to Pittsburgh and have 2 barrel beer sent out on truck. Well, Steve's old lady, she make it plenty prune jack, and all week she make it cake, and Mary she help, she was glad like anything Sunday gonna be a party, and she think maybe she gonna catch men's lap. Another hunky girls who have mans who work at the mills. Steve tell everybody what gone be on Sunday, and all them young fellers start lifting up dolly bars and 18-inch mill. It's a big hunk of steel what is heavy like anything, so they sew 'em for that Saturday. So that they strong for Sunday. Some people say they betcha that Pete Pusick, the strongest man in Pete's, lift 'em up dolly bars some like it was toothpicks. Other people think maybe Ellie Svensky be better man and he gonna catch fine girls like Mary for Frau. But everybody wish it gone be him who was best mans, and everybody they look at that married like they feel strong like anything. So So pretty soon, next Sunday, be there, and Hunky Man's commit from Monison, come from Comsaid, comet from Deskew, and comet from every place along the Monongahela River. And they gonna show everybody how strong they is this time. Steve have everything fixed up for him. Big field down by riverbank, he put 2 barrel beers what commit from brewery, and he put table what he make it where old lady gonna put prune jack and cakes, and have 3 daily bars, and get all from mill. One of those dolly bars is just a little one that weigh 350 pounds. Another dolly bars weigh 500 pounds, and the big one she weigh more than another 2 put together. On the side of the field, Steve has fixed up benches where women can sit and nurse baby and see what gonna happen right there by the platform like the 4th of July, and red paper and flags and everything. Mary, she sit on platform where all the young fellow can get good see and see what they gonna get after they lift up them dolly bars. Mary was dressing up like there was a big funeral. She has a dress on what her made it look like a wedding dress, and it was pretty, I tell you. It was all red and green silk, too. On front was a big bunch of lace with Rosmer, an old country maker. On finger was ring with nice red stone, what Steve buy from company store, and on head a nice scarf. Oh, sure, when Mary go on platform, everybody say she was prettier than Queen. Steve was happy mans that day, I tell you. He was dressed up with sleeves down and tie on his neck, and he walked around like he was the boss of everything, and he yelled like this. Hiya, Pete! You think you feeling all right today? By gods, you better no be sick and have lots of steam. It take plenty strong men to lift up them dolly bars. And then he say, Hey, ya Ella, what matter with you? Maybe better you take another drink of prune jack. You look like a little bit white in the face, like you was afraid Peter or Sam gonna be stronger than you. By gods, I was a young man same as you. I lifted up them whole damn 3 bars one time to catch fine girls like Mary. Then he laugh and he pull mustache and walk it up and down the same like niggas man on payday. After everybody sit around for a little bit, and everybody having 1, 2, 3 drinks all around, Steve get on platform and make a speech. He said, For a couple years now, everybody want what's young man and feel pretty good. They commit for me and say, pretty soon Mary gone looking for mans. Me, I catch good job for blast furnace. Me, I best mans for what work at the mills. Best mans whatever spoke of 'em in the tap hole. Sure, I'm strong like anything. What's matter, Mary be no frau for me? Then Steve, he stop his speech, and he stick it out his tongue like he was not feeling so good for stomach, and he says, By gods, I hear so many mans talk like that it make me sick. So I fix him up a plan, and now we gonna see what good man's gonna be Mary. Daughter of Steve Mestrovich, me, by gods. What is best man's for the Sunday man to open hearth any place? First, everybody gonna lift up them small dolly bars. If anybody lift him up that little one, then he go and play with little kids, and that's all. Next, everybody gonna lift up the second dolly bars. Anybody know lifting that second dolly bars, then they go and sit with the womans and stare to the strong men's, while the strong men's gonna show him something. Then everybody gonna lift up them last dolly bar. By gods, this dolly bar be made like a bloomer mill, and she is so heavy that I can no lift myself. Somebody gonna lift up that dang steel jar from Genesis. That man's gonna marry Mary. Y'all damn right, you betcha. So all them young fellows pull shirt and get ready to lift dolly bars. First man's was Pete. Pete, he walked it over to the dolly bar and he looked around to make sure everybody see, and then he reached down and lifted him up easy like anything. Everybody hollered. That's a big man, you Pete. That's good fella. Pete, he seen nothing. He just walked it and laughing at it like he was going to be plenty strong this time. Then Eli come over dolly bar and lift him up easier than Pete, and everybody yells some more. 2 fellows were coming from Homestead try and lift him up, and they can no move dolly bars from ground. Then everybody laughing and say, Ho, 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 what kind of mans you have in that place, Homestead? Our home got boy just 2 years old, and I think maybe better send him by your mill to help you out a little. Better you go and play with the kids, little mans. Make no monkey round here, big mans, and get hurt this time. Well, after that, they lift up them second dolly bars, and what you think? Only 3 men's catch enough steam to do that. That was Pete, that was Eli, and that was another man's from Johnstown. This fellow from Johnstown was plenty big man's all right, and he'd catch plenty steam to lift him up dolly bars. He'd do that easy as anything. Then all his friends, they holler and for him, and they make face at Pete and Eli like they were sure that the fellow was strong as men, and take Mary Mestrovich back to Johnstown with him. People from this place no like that business. They like much better that Pete or Eli are gonna be strongest, and then Mary Mestrovich stay in this place, which have better mills than Johnstown anytime. That mills at Johnstown is just little place. When they do that, she no make it more than 200 tons of steel a day. So people's getting mad at these people from Johnstown, and they get making with that Pete or Eli gonna be stronger than this fellow. They say Pete say that it's good business and nobody gonna worry nothing. He done lifting them up on big dollar bars just same as lift them up the little ones. Then Pete gone over and take a big drink of prune jack, and he spit 'em on his hands. Then he reached down and grabbed that big dollar bars. His arm cracked like a paper bag. His eyes stick out like the head from like apple. Sweat run down his face, same like it was working in a furnace in July. My jeans was no good this time. By Jesus, that dolly bar is no move it 1 inch from ground. Then Eli tried, and he was no good this time. People from this place gonna lack somebody kick in the stomach when they see that. They think for now they're sure gonna lose Mary Mestrovich. They're gonna lose money, and then they gonna listen to when peoples from Jonestown say, "Ho ho ho! Over to this place means just talk like women's talk all the time and do it nothing. Coming over to Johnstown where men's so strong that they tear down mill and fix 'em up again every day, just for fun." Then this fellow from Johnstown talking 2 big drinks of prune jack. He twisted his mustache so he looked like a king, and he waved hand for everybody. Then he fixed his feet so he no be shaky, and bend down and grab at that dolly bars. He give a big pull, and then another big pull, and he grunt like some pig at dinner time. He pulled so damn hard that dolly bars in his hands come loose, and he fall down to the ground. People from this place just felt much better. She is not easy as this fellow would think. Jonestown fall mad like Frau when the husband get drunk and spend all money on paydays. He'd jump up from the ground and he'd cuss like hell, and he'd grab at dolly bars again. No good this time either. Ho ho ho! A laugh like that coming from somebody in the crowd. Everybody looked around to see who laughing at that. The man from Johnstown straightened back and say, "Who laugh at me? By Jesus Christ Almighty, if that fellow who left think he's so strong, so what's the matter he no commit here and pick up them dolly bars?" Then after that, he gonna break his neck. Then out of the crowd walk the biggest mans whatever I see. He have backs bigger than doors, and hands bigger than Peter and Willie together. Leg like bulls, and arm bigger than somebody's round waist. I'll bet you my life he was more than 7 feet tall. Oh, he was the prettiest man's whatever has anybody seen. Everybody look at everybody, and everybody say, "Who is that fellow anyhow?" And everybody shakes heads, and they no seen it before. That fellow, he walked over to dolly bars, and he just laughed so hard have to hold his belly that he can stand on his feet. That fellow from Jonestown, he take it pull of trousers. He spit on hands, and he gonna take a slug at that fellow. But that man's, he habit fell from Jonestown in one hand, and he pick up them dolly bars. Then he just hold 'em out and shake 'em until a man from Jonestown yell he's so afraid. By gods, everybody was white like sheet. They never seen him before, mans that can be so strong like that. But that fellow put down that fellow from Jonestown, down so easy as a little baby by mutter, and he said, "Nobody be afraid nothing. I want to hurt nobody. I no want to make it trouble. Just have a little fun. That's all." Steve Mestrovich walked over and he said, "What kind of mans are you? What place you commit from?" And that fellow answered, "My name is Joe Magarac. What you think of that, eh?" Everybody laughing for that, for Magarac and honky means jackass donkey. They know this fellow is a fine fellow, all right, when he say his name is Joe Jackass. Then this fellow say, "Sure, Magarac Joe, that's me. All I do is eat it and work it like the same jackass donkey. Me and I own the Steelmans in the whole world. You're damn right. Looking for me. I'll show you something." He pull off shirt and everybody look it. By gods, he tell no lie. He was Steelman's all right. He was over steel the same like he was open from hearth. Steel hands, steel body, steel everything. Everybody say, "What the hell's you think of that?" Joe Magarac said, "That's all right. That's good business for me. Me, I was born inside Ore Mountain many year ago. Today I come down from the mountain to an ore train and was over the ore pile by blast furnace." No, he's apparently made of steel. Then he'd laugh and twist Dolly Bars in two with hands. Joe Messerich smiled like somebody give him cold beer on a hot day, and he'd take it Mary by the hand and lead her over to Joe Magarac. Time he was gone cast best husband from Mary, and that was a whole country. Joe Magarac take a long look at Mary, and he say, "Oh boy, I never seen such pretty girls as that. You make it fine frau for anybody. But that's no business for me. What you think I catch all this time from sitting in woman's house? Me, by God's not me. I just catch time for work, that's all. Be better all right if Mary has husband. I think I see her get a little bit dizzy in the head when she look at Pete. That's good. After me, just Pete's the best man in the country." Joe kiss his shiny metal ass. Joe Magarac closed one eye for Steve, and Steve closed one eye for Joe Magarac, and Mary was happy like anything, for she liked that Pete all right better than anybody. Fellow from Jonestown get black in the face, and he stomp around like mad like anything, but he afraid to say anything for a fellow who was made from steel and who can commit ore from mountain. He'd go away. Everything was fixed right up there for them. Priest can met with Altar Boy, and Pete and Mary kneel down, and pretty soon they who's been in front. First one to dance it with the bride was Joe Magarac. Then everybody get drunk and have a big time, and was happy as anything. So next day, Joe Magarac gone down to Miss Hawkley and catch a boarding house in Millgate, and he say, "Howdy do, Miss Hawkey? My, but you look it nice this morning. From kitchen commit smell the best breakfast I ever smell any place. This place look it all right for me. I gone work in the mill this place, and I want a good place to eat. I don't want a room, just 5 big meals a day, that's all, for I work at night and turn day all the same time." So Joe Magarac lived by Horky's boarding house, and he catch job in the mill. He work it from November. He work it on number 7 furnace by open hearth, and he work it all night and all day without finish, and he no get tired nothing. He stand it before number 7, and he throw 'em like limestone or scrap and everything. Then he go sit by furnace door with the fires in furnace looking around his chin. When steel melt 'em up, Joe Magarac put in his hands and stir 'em around while he could cook it, and when furnace was ready for tap 'em out, he'd crawl into the furnace and scoop up big handfuls of steel and dump 'em out in the ingot mold. After that, he'd run down to the lower end and grab that steel by his hands and squeeze 'em out from the fingers, and he'd make it rails. 8 rails one time, 4 by each hand. He'd make it, by gods. Pretty soon he'd make it more steel as all the furnace together. Nobody ever seen before such business like that. So boss opened hers with a big sign made that he put a big sign on the fence where everybody would see the sign and say, "Home of Joe Magarac." Joe Magarac was working every day and every night at the mill, and some like before he would make it rails with hands. Pretty soon that pile of rails in the yard get bigger and bigger from old Joe Magarac so working so hard. After a couple months, the yard was full. Every place was rails. Joe Magarac see that he just laugh it and work it harder as ever. So one day the roller boss, he come up and down the finishing mill, and he said to Joe Magarac, who was working by his furnace in open hearth, the roller boss says, "Well, Joe Magarac, I guess we're going to shut down the mill early this week. This time we catch plenty of rails every place, and we no catch any others. So by gods, we're going to shut down the mill Thursday night, and we no start 'em up again until it's Monday morning. Maybe you're going to put slow heat in the furnace. You tell Stockman to give you 50-ton stock. You put 'em in the stock in the furnace, slow fire so that keeps you warm it, and be ready to start 'em up Monday. Joe Magarac act like he gonna say something, then he no say nothing, and the roller boss think everything gonna be all right this time, and he gone away. When next Monday come, the man's gone back to work for open hearth. Then they see that Joe Magarac is not working in furnace that morning. Every place they look at, they no see Joe any place. Another man's was working in number 7, and pretty soon the number 7 was ready to tap. All out motor boss gone down to the platforms to see what kind of steel that slow heat make. He was standing in the ingot mold, and pretty soon he hear a voice that say, "How she look at this time?" The boss look around, and he see nobody, and then the voice say, "It's me, Joe Magarac. I'm inside ladle." Melty boss turn around and he look inside ladle, and he see Joe. Joe sitting inside ladle with hot steel boiling up around neck. Melty boss was scared like anything you could say. "What the hell's you doing there, Joe Magarac? Better you gonna crawl out that ladle right way, or I think that for sure she gonna melt you up." Joe Magarac closed one eyes from Melty boss, and he say, "That's fine. That's good business. That's just what I want. By gods, I'd be sick this time of the mill and shut down from Thursday and no start 'em up again until Monday. What the hell is I gonna do all this time shut down anyway? I hear Big Boss say that he's gonna make it 3 good heat steel, so that he never best tried steel, and he, yeah." Troubles again. What the hell's I gonna do all the time the mill shut down anyway? I hear Big Boss say that he was gonna make it 3 good heat steel, so that he gonna have best steel what can make it for building the new mill this place. They gonna tear down this old mills and make new ones, and what's the next mill gonna be in Mogahola Valley? It's gonna be the best mills in the world. Then by gods, I get planned. I gonna jump in furnace when steel is melted down, and they get melted up on me. So it was made from steel, so make it steel, and what make it mills. So, Mr. Boss, you gonna listen to me, and I gonna tell you nothing. You're gonna take this steel ladle, what has me inside, and you're gonna pour it out in the molded molds, and then you're gonna roll them out and make it beam, channel, and maybe 1 or 2 piece angle, and then you're gonna make that steel making your mills. You do like I say for you, and you're gonna see you're gonna have the best mills for any place. Goodbye. Then Joe Magarac sat back down in the ladle and hold his chin in boiling steel until he was all melted up. Pretty soon they're gonna pour him out in a ingot mold. Well, after they roll out that heat and cut 'em, they see what this time they have the best steel that was ever made. Oh my, that steel was smooth and straight, and it have no seam or pipe or nothing. Then Meltabar say he gone around for everywhere to say, "Now we're gonna have the best steel mills for sure. You see that steel? By God, nobody ever makes steel like that before. That's just because Joe Magarac, he make it that steel. Sure, he's inside, and now we're going to take it down beam and down channel, and we're going to build finest mills whatever was." They do like Meltabar say, and that why all the young boys want to go for the mill, and that is why they call somebody a honky Magarac. He only laugh and feel proud as anything, and that is why we capture the best steel from anybody. You're damn right. Oh, that was painful. That was how it was written, so that was not me trying to make up an accent. That was me reading the text as it was. What the hell is a hunky? What is a hunky? Okay, good to know that entire story with ethnic slurs. Um, Hunky is an ethnic slur used for the United States and Canada to refer to immigrants of Hungarian or Slavic descent. It originated in the coal regions of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, where the immigrants from Central Europe, Hungarians, Magyar, and Polish people, it's just, huh. Well, we learned a new word. Disparaging slang term for someone from East Central European, especially a laborer. Yet somehow it turned into someone with a well-developed physique and sexually attractive. Explain that. There's a Perugly in chat. So who wrote this story? Admittedly, they said there was, Monongahela. Monongahela is apparently the area in Pennsylvania. And Magarac is Slavic term, so yeah. So much fun. I'm going to have to add that definition of what a hunky is to the description when I do the edits. Oh, you caught it. Dang it. Ugh. Okay. I need to... Let's see, got 20-some minutes. Yeah, you can get that to him. Okay. Quick break. Psych myself up for the section. There are 8 verses to this song. Nah, Team Rocket Hat just said more. Anyway, I didn't notice in time. I was planning on getting a sailor cap, but I could not find one. Probably should be glad I'm not going to pull out the penny whistle, because that would just make my microphone peak horribly. And I'm not even going to give her the stage to do this. It was a thought, but no. 20 minutes. So the next section, well, next person listed in the Miracle Men section is Popeye. And I was going to try to do the voice and everything else just to see if I could do it. But I'm not really going to try that hard. So hopefully I'm just going to get through with it and not just completely crack up. I will probably end up, well, I would say I'd edit this out for my songs from books, but seeing as this is going to be by itself, it's going to be edited out by itself anyway. Yes, that Popeye. It's interesting that this song didn't come out until Popeye was already out for like 10 years. And saying the copyright on this song is 1935 and 1936. The cartoon has a copyright of 1929. So Popeye didn't get his own official theme song until he was moving beyond just being a Max Fleischer cartoon, which is interesting. Again, I will try to sing this as it is written, and not how I've heard it. Again, there are 8 stanzas to this poem, song, whatever you want to call it. Oh boy. Songs of Popeye. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am, 'cause that's all what I am. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Nevermore will I roam, for I feels right at home. Yeah, I can't even do the rhythm right. Let's see. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. Nevermore will I roam, for I feels right at home. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm just a little feller, but it hasn't any yeller. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I've said I hate stripes, but I'll fight for me life. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. When I eat spinach, I eat, I cannot be beat. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I fight for the right with all me might. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I am strong as the breezes which blows down the breezes. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I am strong for the finish, 'cause I eats me spinach. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. That's it. So it's, I am what I am, 'cause that's all what I am. Nevermore will I roam, for I feel as right at home. I am just a little feller, but I hasn't any yeller. I've said I hate stripes, but I'll fight for my lives. When spinach I eat, I cannot be beat. I fights for what's right with all of me might. I'm strong as the breezes which blows down the treeses. I'm strong as the finish, 'cause I eats me spinach. Everything else is I am Popeye the Sailor. Yeah, I didn't want to take out the Tinwhistle. Because I do have one. I'll say that too. I can't think of what you know it is. Nope. Higher. Nope. Lower than that. Nope. That's too high. I don't know. Oh, this is it. Okay, this is key skill. Oh. There we go. I'm Popeye. Okay. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. There you go. Better? I said, if I'd realized it was going to be this week, I would have done more planning. Yes, that is the music from a Clark Tinwhistle. Technically, Papa would have done a two-tone whistle. So if I do two-tone, for the most part. I am Papa the Sailor Man. As I said, if I had realized it would have been this week, I've done more planning. Get back in there. Now think about it. In the original version, there was only one whistle blow. Come on, set my chords in. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. Hey, Matsu. Can you guess what you just missed? Ooh, ad starts in 9 minutes. I would say you missed me singing Popeye. Excuse me. And Darth here said it needs to have the whistle. So I have some of these, tin whistles that came from Clark. So I thought I'd do a few. If both of the ones I have are D scale, I thought I would have had a C somewhere. Look about these. It's an anchor of Popeye song. Oh no. Think I should go through it again? Let's see, if I did the song like it is in the cartoons, he repeats the I am Papa the Sailor Man twice before he does each section. And I don't have the hat. I am Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am, 'cause it's all what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Nevermore will I roam, 'cause I feels right at home. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I am a little feller, but I hasn't a yeller. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I said I hates fights, but I'll fight for me life. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. When I eat the spinach, I cannot be beat. Try this again. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. When spinach I eat, I cannot be beat. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I fight for what's right with all in me might. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong as the breezes that blows down the trees. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong as a finch 'cause I eat me spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. There. Better? And for once, they don't have the music for this one. It's just the song. Oh, just the lyrics. I'm accompanying myself with a Tinwhistle. Okay, there's 4 minutes before ads. I'm not sure if I can get this next introduction done by the time. I will try. 6. Patron Saints. The hero is a man who has fought impressively for a cause of which we approve. Miss Bloom. On the truly patriotic level, our heroes are apt to be too good and too true. Such is the case of the typically good man Washington, whose integrity is traditionally taught by means of what the doubter in the Sazerac Lion Club characterizes as the doggonedest biggest lie was ever told in this here club. Yet, in spite of the more robust and even backwoodsy traits and episodes in young manhood, the juvenile Washington of Parsons Weems' cherry tree legend is a piece of the supercilious postage stamp likeness of the older Washington has become in the hearts of the countrymen. As a human being and folk hero, as American image and symbol, Lincoln is more satisfying. His log cabin to White House career fits with Horatio Algier, which is essentially a fairy tale pattern of the poor boy who makes good. His genius as a folk storyteller helped in making of his own legend, and he suffered from the martyrdom in which the hero's hypothesis. He is also the perfect exemplar of the Freudian formula which sees in his homeliness the potentiality of our importance and the American democratic creed of the self-made man. Any boy can become president. Rather than too good to be true, Lincoln was great because he was not afraid to be common. Although Americans, as a rule, have clung less tenaciously to the ideal of a good life than to that of a useful one, following Mr. Hoover's American way of stimulating their ingenuity to solve their own problems, the doctrine of plain living and high thinking has produced spiritual heroes, saints and martyrs in whom self-abnegation is combined with service. The saints are not far from the cranks it is seen from the fantastic Johnny Appleseed, whose resemblance to St. Francis is balanced by the likeness to a Yankee peddler. As a primitive Christian in him merged with the footloose type of hero, this benevolence monomania of planting apple seeds in remote places has overshadowed his less beneficial fixation of sowing the seed of dog from a belief which is possessed valuable anti-malarial virtues. His inner meaning as a mystical pioneer casts a unique role as savior among wastrels, as the intent of these lines written to be spoken in a pageant. My name is Johnny Appleseed. I lived in this part of the country a long time ago, when it was hardly been touched. I liked the Indians, and I liked the white people, and I liked the animals, and didn't hurt any of them. I planted seeds and set out apple trees for the settlers, and I took care of them. I told people about God, and tried to be a good man myself. I tried to be a good American in this land we found. Maybe I was a little, maybe, but I'm not dead yet. Okay, so that's the introduction to the next section. And just in time for us to go to break. So, see everyone in a few. Did anyone else have extremely long ads? I was watching on my mod screen. I got 2 protein macaroni and cheese ads in a row. But it almost ran for like 4 minutes instead of 3. That was space out anyway. But just going by the pre-roll timer, it went for almost 5 minutes. Because when you do the pre-roll, it counts it down from 63. And I came back after watching the mod ads at like a little around 58. So that would have been about 5 minutes. So ads are running long for some reason. But anyway, we're back. And this first section is about George Washington. So this is from The Life of George Washington by Mason Locke Weems. 1806. Damn it. 2 bots in a row again. Why are they coming at me in pairs? Why was AI bots? I'm usually after the ad break at that. Kind of weird. But they are banned and they are reported. So, whatever. So, something I cannot say myself. I cannot tell a lie. Never did the wise Ulysses take more pains in his beloved Telemachus than did Mr. Washington with George to inspire him with an early love of truth. Truth, George, he said, is the loveliest quality of youth. I would ride 50 miles, my son, to see the little boy whose heart is so honest and his lips so pure that we may depend on every word he says. Oh, how lovely does such a child appear in the eyes of everybody. His parents dote on him. His relations glory in him. They're constantly praising him to their children, whom they beg to imitate him. They are often sending for him to visit them, and receive him when he comes, with as much joy as if he were a little angel come to set pretty examples for their children. I used to be the good example in my neighborhood, so, yeah. But oh, how different, George, is the case with the boy who is given to lying, that nobody can believe a word he says. Like Wolf. He is looked at with aversion wherever he goes. His parents dread to see him come among their children. Oh, George, my son, rather than see you come to this pass, dear as you are to my heart, gladly I would assist you to nail you up to your little coffin and follow you to your grave. Hard indeed would it be to give up my son, whose little feet are always so ready to run about with me, whose fondly looking eyes and his sweet prattle make so large a part of my happiness. But still, I would give him up rather than see him become a common liar. Pa, said George seriously, do I ever tell lies? No, George, I thank God you do not, my son. I rejoice in the hope you never will. At least you shall never, from me, have cause to be guilty of so shameful a thing. Many parents, indeed, even compel their children to this vile practice by barbarously beating them for every little fault. Hence, on the next offense, the little terrified creature slips out a lie, just to escape the rod. But as you yourself, George, you know I always told you, and tell you now again, that whatever by accident do you anything wrong, which must be the cause, as you are but a poor little boy yet, without experience or knowledge, you must never tell a falsehood to conceal it. But bravely come up, my son, like a little man, and tell me of it. And instead of beating you, George, I will but the more honor and love you for it, oh, my dear. This, you say, was sowing a good seed. Yes, it was. And the crop, thank God, was, I believe it ever will be, where the man acts the true parent, that is, the guardian angel by his child. The following anecdote is a case in point. It is too valuable to be lost and too true to be doubted, for it is communicated to me by the same excellent lady to whom I am indebted for at the last. When George, she said, was but 6 years old, he was made a wealthy master of a hatchet, of which, like most little boys, he was eminently fond of, and concerned, and constantly going about chopping everything that came his way. One day, in his garden, where he often amused himself hacking at his mother's pea sticks, he luckily trod the edge of his hatchet on the body of a beautiful young English cherry tree, which he barked so terribly that I don't believe the tree ever got better for it. Next morning, the old gentleman, finding out what had fallen his tree, which, by the by, was his favorite, came into the house, and with much warmth asked the mischievous author, declaring at the same time that he would not be taking 5 guineas for his tree. Nobody could tell him anything about it. Presently George and his hatchet made an appearance. George, said his father, do you know who killed the beautiful cherry tree yonder in the garden? That was a tough question, and George staggered under it for a moment, but quickly recovered himself, and looking at his father with the sweet face of youth, brightened with an inexpressible charm of all-conquering truth, he bravely cried out, I can't tell a lie, Pa. You know I can't tell a lie. I cut it with my hatchet. Run into my arms, you dearest boy, cried his father in transports. Run to my arms. Glad am I, George, that you killed my tree, for you have paid me for 1,000-fold. Such an act of heroism as my son is worth more than 1,000 trees, though blossomed with silver and their fruits the purest gold. It was in this way, both interesting and at once both his heart and head, that Mr. Washington conducted George with great ease and pleasure along the happy paths of virtue. I wonder who hears this for. So a woman told the original author that story. Interesting to know, because it literally says that she said. Oh no, the comfy got away. Honest Abe. 1. The young storekeeper. As a clerk, he proved honest and efficient, and my readers will be interested in some of the illustrations of the former trait which I will find in Dr. Holland's interesting volume. One day a woman came into the store and purchased sundry articles. They footed up $2.0625, and the young clerk thought they did. We do not hear nowadays of 6.25 cents, but this was coin borrowed from the Spanish currency, and was well known in my own boyhood. The bill was paid, and the woman was entirely satisfied. But the young storekeeper, not feeling quite as sure to the accuracy of his calculations, added up the items once more. To his dismay, he found that the sum total should have been but $2. I've made her pay 6.25 cents too much, said Abe, disturbed. It was a trifle, but many clerks would have dismissed it as such. But Abe was too conscientious for that. The money must be paid back, he decided. This would have been easy enough had the woman lived just around the corner. But as the young man knew, she lived between 2 and 3 miles away. This, however, did not alter the matter. It was night, but he closed and locked the store and walked to the residence of the customer. Arrived there, he explained the matter, paid over the 6.25 cents, and returned satisfied. If I were a mere capitalist, I would have been willing to lend the money to such a young man without security. Here's another illustration of young Lincoln's strict honesty. A woman entered the store and asked for half a pound of tea. The young clerk weighed it out and handed her the parcel. This was the last sale of the day. The next morning, when commencing his duties, Abe discovered a 4-ounce weight on the scales. It flashed upon him at once that he had used this in the scale on the previous night, and so, of course, given his customer a short weight. I'm afraid that there are many country merchants who would not have been much worried about this discovery. Not so the young clerk, in whom we are interested. He weighed out the balance of the half-pound, shut up the store, and carried it to the defrauded customer. I think my young readers will begin to see that the name so often given in later times to President Lincoln of Honest Old Abe was well deserved. The man who begins by strict honesty in his youth is not likely to change as he grows older, and mercantile honesty is some guarantee of political honesty. So, someone who's honest in their business dealings would be honest in the presidency? Imagine that. 2. Spell defied. Spell defied! This question was put to a class in spelling by the master. The first pupil in the straggling line of backwoods boys and girls who stood up in class answered with some hesitation. D-E-F-I-D-E. Defied. The master frowned. Next! He called sharply. The next improved upon the effort of the first speller, and a confident tone answered. D-E-F-Y-D-E. Wrong again. The next might try it, said the teacher. D-E-F-Y-D was the next attempt. Really, you do me great credit, said the teacher, a frown gathering on his brow. You can't spell any word of 2 syllables. It's shameful. I'll keep this whole class and the rest of the day, if necessary, till this word is correctly spelled. Now in turn came the young girl and Robbie, who was a favorite with Abe. She was a pretty girl, but nevertheless the terrible word puzzled her. In her perplexity, she chanced to turn towards the seats at the window occupied by her long-legged friend Abe. Abe was perhaps the best speller in the school. A word like defied was easy enough for him. A word like defied was easy enough for him, and he wanted to help the girl through. As Miss Robbie looked at him, she saw a smile upon his face as he significantly touched his eye with his finger. The girl took the hint and spelled the word right. Right at last, said Master Crawford, whose back was turned, and who had not seen Abe's thumb show. It is lucky for you that all the one class knew how to spell, or I would have kept my word, kept you all in. D, whatever, D's nuts. D5 D's nuts. 3. Working out a book. All the information we could obtain about his early times interesting, for it was then that Abe was laying the foundation of his future eminence. His mind and character were slowly developing and shaping themselves for the future. From Mr. Lamon's life, I quote the paragraph which will throw light upon his habits and tastes at this age of 17. Abe loved to lie under a shade tree or up in the loft of the cabin and read, cipher, and scribble. At night he sat by the chimney jamb and ciphered by the light of the fire on the wood-fired shovel. When the shovel was fairly covered, he would shave it off with Tom Lincoln's drawing knife and begin again. In the daytime, he would use boards for the same purpose out of doors, and went through the shaving process everlastingly. His stepmother repeats often that he read every book he could get his hands on, says she. Abe read diligently. He read every book he... Oh, she does have to say that. His stepmother often repeats that he read every book he could lay his hands on. She says Abe read diligently. He read every book he could lay his hands on, and when he came across a passage that struck him, he would write it down on the boards if he had no paper, and keep it there until he could get paper. Then he would rewrite it, look at it, repeat it. He had a copybook, a kind of scrapbook, in which he put down all the things, and thus preserved them. I'm tempted to also quote the reminiscence of John Hanks, who lived with the Lincolns from the time Abe was 14 to the time he became 18 years of age. When Lincoln, Abe, and I returned to the house from work, he would go to the cupboard, snatch a piece of cornbread, and take down a book, and sit down on a chair, cock his legs up as high as his head, and read. He and I worked barefooted, grubbed it, plowed, mowed, and cradled together. Plowed corn, gathered it, and shucked corn. Abraham read constantly when he had opportunity. I may be supposed, however, that the books upon which Abe could lay his hands were few in number. There were no libraries, either private or public, in the neighborhood, and he was obliged to read what he could gather from what he could get, rather than those which he could have chosen, had he been able to select from a large collection. Still, it is a matter of interest to know what books he actually did read in his formative period. Some of them certainly were worth-worthing, such as Aesop's Fables, Robinson Crusoe, Pilgrim's Progress, The History of the United States, and Weems' Life of Washington. The last book I borrowed from a neighbor, old Josiah Crawford. I follow the statement of Mr. Lemon rather than with Dr. Holland, who says it was Master Crawford's teacher. When not reading, he laid it away in a part of the cabin where he thought it would be free from harm. But it so happens that just behind the shelf on which he had placed it was a great crack between the logs in the wall. One night a storm came up suddenly, and rain beat through the crevice and soaked the borrowed book through and through. The book was almost utterly spoiled. Abe felt very uneasy, for the book was valuable in his eyes, as well as in the eyes of its owner. He took the damaged volume and trudged over to Mr. Crawford's in some perplexity and mortification. "Well, Abe, what brings you over so early?" said Mr. Crawford. "I've got some bad news for you," answered Abe, with a lengthened face. "Bad news? What is it?" "Know the book you lent me, The Life of Washington?" Yes. Well, the rain last night spoiled it," and Abe showed the book wet to a pulp inside, at the same time explaining how it had been injured. "Well, it's too bad, Ivan. You ought to pay the price for it, Abe. You must have been dreadful careless." "I'll pay for it if I had money, Mr. Crawford." "If you've got no money, you can work it out," said Mr. Crawford. "I'll do whatever you think right." So it was arranged that Abe would work 3 days for Crawford, pulling fodder, the value of his labor being rated at 25 cents a day. As the book had cost 75 cents, this would be regarded as satisfactory. So Abe worked his 3 days and discharged his debt. Mr. Lamon is supposed to find fault with Crawford for exacting this penalty, but it appears to be only equitable, and I'm glad to think that Abe was willing to act honorably in the matter. I want a copy of The Life of Washington for 75 cents. That would have probably been a hardback back then. I don't know, did they have... I'm sure they would have done some paperbacks. No. It would be pre-Civil War, so I don't think they'd have anything but hardbacks. Since books were hard to come by and not exactly nickel and dime sort of things. No? Maybe. I feel like I'd have to look it up. Anyway. Next up. The guy who really just said it to get people drunk. Johnny Appleseed, a pioneer hero. The far west is rapidly becoming the only traditional destination railroads have destroyed the romance of frontier life, or have surrounded it with many appliances of civilization, but the pioneer character is rapidly becoming mythical. The men and women who obtain their groceries and dry goods from New York by rail in a few hours have nothing in common with those who, 50 years ago, packed salt in hundreds of miles to make their mush pliable, and could only exchange corn and wheat for molasses and calico for making long and perilous voyages in flatboats down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers to New Orleans. 2 generations of frontier lives have accumulated stores of narratives which, like those of the beautiful tributaries of great rivers, are forgotten in the broad sweep of the larger current of history. The march of Titans sometimes tramples out the memory of smaller but more useful lives, and sensational glare often eclipses more modest and purer lights. This has been the case in the popular demand of the dime novel delusions of Fenimore Cooper's romances of border life, which have preserved the records of Indian rapine and atrocity as the only memorials of pioneer history. But the early days of the Western settlement witnessed similar heroisms than those of human torture, nobler victories of those of tomahawk and scalping life. Among the heroes of endurance that was voluntary and of the action that was creative and not sanguinary, there was one man whose name, seldom mentioned, now saved by some of the few surviving pioneers, deserves to be perpetuated. The first reliable trace of our modest hero finds him in the territory of Ohio in 1801, with a horse load of apple seeds, where he planted in various places, and about the borders of Licking Creek, the first orchard thus originated by him being on the farm of Isaac Staton, in what is now known as Licking Country, in the old state of Ohio. During the 5 succeeding years, although he was undoubtedly following the strange occupation, we have no authentic account of his movements until we reach a pleasant spring day in 1806, when a pioneer settler in Jefferson County, Ohio, noticed a peculiar craft with a remarkable occupant and curious cargo slowly dropping down with the current of the Ohio River. It was Johnny Appleseed, by the name of which Jonathan Chapman was afterward known in every log cabin in the Ohio River to the northern lakes, and westward to the prairies of what is now the state of Indiana. With 2 canoes lashed together, he was transporting a load of apple seeds to the western frontier for the purpose of creating orchards in the furthest verge of the white settlements. With his canoes, he passed down the Ohio to the Marietta, where he entered the masking room, ascending the stream of that river until it reached the mouth of the Wohonding, or White Woman Creek, and still onward up the Mohican and into the Black Fork to the head of the navigation, in the region known as Ashland and Richland counties, on the line of Pittsburgh and Fort Wayne Railroad in Ohio. A long and toilsome voyage it was, as a glance at the map will show, and must have occupied a great deal of time. Ouch. A long and toilsome voyage it was, as a glance of the map will show, and must have occupied a great deal of time as lonely traveler stopped at every inviting spot to plant the seeds and make his infant nurseries. These are the first well-authenticated facts of the history of Jonathan Chapman, whose birth, there is a good reason for believing, occurred in Boston, Massachusetts in 1775. According to this, which was his own statement in one of the less reticent moods, he was at the time of the appearance of Licking Creek 26 years of age, and whether impelled by his eccentricities by some absolute misery of the heart which would only find relief in the incessant motion, or governed by benevolent monomania, his whole afterlife was devoted to the work of planting apple seeds in remote places. The seeds he gathered from cider presses in western Pennsylvania, his canoe voyage of 1806 appears to have been the only occasion upon which he adapted the method of transporting them. All his subsequent journeys were made on foot. Having planted his stock of seeds, he returned to Pennsylvania for a fresh supply, and the sacks made any less substantial fabric would not endure the hard usage in the long trip through dense forest, underbrush, and briars, when he provided himself with leathern bags. Securely packed, the seeds were conveyed, sometimes on the back of a horse, and not unfortunately on his own shoulders, either over part of an old Indian trail that led from Fort Dusky to Detroit, by way of Fort Sandusky, over what is styled as the appendix of Hutchins' History of Bouquet's Expedition 18. Man, I cannot say these. By way of Fort Sandusky, over what's styled in the appendix to Hutchinson's History of Bouquet's Expedition 1764, the second route through the wilderness of Ohio, which would require him to traverse a distance of 166 miles in the west-northwest direction from Fort Duquesne, in order to reach the Black Fork of the Mohican. This region, although it is now densely populated, still possesses the romantic beauty that railroads and bustling towns cannot obliterate. The country is forest-clad hills and green valleys, through which numerous bright streams flow on their way to the Ohio. But when Johnny Appleseed reached some lonely log cabin, he would find himself in a veritable wilderness. The old settlers say that the margins of the streams, which the first settlements generally made, were thickly covered with low matted growth of small timber, while nearer to the water was a rank mass of long grass, interlaced with morning glory and wild pea vines, among which funeral willows and clustering adders stood like sentinels of the outposts of civilization. The hills, that rise almost to the dignity of the mountains, were crowned with forest trees, while in the coverts were innumerable bears, wolves, deer, and droves of wild hogs that were as ferocious as any beast of prey. And the grass of the Saga and other venomous reptiles lurked in such numbers that the settler named Chandler has left the fact on record that during the first season of his residence, while mowing a little prairie which formed part of his land, he killed over 200 black rattlesnakes in the area that would involve an average destruction of one of these reptiles for each rod of land. A frontiersman who felt himself sufficiently protected by his rifle against wild beasts and hostile Indians found it necessary to guard against the attacks of insidious enemies in the grass by wrapping bandages of dried grass around his buckskin leggings and moccasins. But Johnny would shoulder his bag of apple seeds and with bare feet penetrate to some remote spot that combined picturesque and fertility of soil, and there he would plant his seeds and place a slight enclosure around the place, and leave them to grow until trees were large enough to have been transplanted by the settlers, who, in the meantime, would have made their clearings in the vicinity. The sites chosen by him are, many of them, well known, and are such that an artist or poet would select open places on the loamy lands that border the creeks, rich, secluded spots hemmed in by giant trees, picturesque now, but 50 years ago, with their wild surroundings and their primal silence, they must have been tenfold more so. In personal appearance, Chapman was a small, wiry man, full of restless activity. He had long black hair, a scanty beard that was never shaved, and keen black eyes that sparkled with a peculiar brightness. His dress was the oddest description. Generally, even in the coldest weather, he went barefoot. But sometimes, for his long journeys, he would make himself a rude pair of sandals, and other times he would wear any cast-off foot covering he chanced to find. A boot on one foot and an old brogan or moccasin on the other. It appears to have been a matter of conscience with him never to purchase shoes, although he was rarely without money enough to do so. On one occasion, it was unusually cold November. While he was traveling barefooted through mud and snow, a settler who happened to possess a pair of shoes that were too small for his own forced their acceptance upon Johnny, declaring that it was sinful for a human being to travel with naked feet in such weather. A few days afterward, the donor was in the village that since became a thriving city in Mansfield, and met his beneficiary contentedly plodding along with his bare foot and half frozen. With some degree of anger, he inquired for the cause of such foolish conduct, and received a reply that Johnny had overtaken a poor barefooted family moving westward, and they appeared to be in much greater need of clothing than he was, and he had given them the shoes. His dress was generally composed of cast-off clothing that he had taken in payment for apple trees, as the pioneers were far less extravagant than their descendants in such matters. The homespun and buckskin garments that they discarded would not be very elegant or serviceable. In his later years, however, he seems to have thought that even this kind of second-hand raiment was too luxurious, as his principal garment was made of a coffee sack, in which he cut holes for his head and arms to pass through, and pronounced it as a very serviceable cloak, and as good clothing as any man need wear. In the matter of headgear, his taste was equally unique. His first experiment was with a tin vessel that served as a cook for his mush. But this was open to objectification that it did not protect his eyes from the beams of the sun. So he constructed a hat of pasteboard with an immense peak in front, and thus having secured the article of combined usefulness with economy, it became his permanent fashion. Thus, strangely clad, he was perpetually wandering through the forests and morasses, and suddenly appearing in white settlements and Indian villages, but there must have been some rare force of gentle goodness dwelling in his looks and breathing in his words, for it is the testimony of all who knew him, notwithstanding his ridiculous attire. He was always treated with the greatest respect by the rudest frontiersmen, and, what is a better test, the boys of the settlements forbore to cheer him. With grown-up people and boys, he was usually reticent. He manifested great affection for the little girls, always having pieces of ribbon or gay calico to give his little favorites. Many a grandmother in Ohio and Indiana can remember the presents she first received as a child from poor homeless Johnny Appleseed. When he consented to eat with any family, he would never sit down on the table until he was sure that there was an ample supply for the children, and his sympathy for their youthful troubles and his kindness toward them made him friends among the juveniles of the borders. The Indians also treated Johnny with the greatest kindness. By these wild and sanguinary natives, he was regarded as a great medicine man on account for his strange appearance, eccentric actions, and especially the fortitude with which he could endure pain, in proof of which he would often thrust pins and needles into his flesh. His nervous sensibilities His nervous sensibilities really seem to have been less acute than those of ordinary people, for his method of treating the cuts and sores that were the consequences of his barefoot wanderings through briars and thorns was to sear the wound with a red-hot iron, and then cure the burn. During the War of 1812, when the frontier settlers were tortured and slaughtered by the savage allies of Great Britain, Johnny Appleseed considered his wanderings and was never harmed by the roving bands of hostile Indians. On many occasions, the impunity with which he ranged the country enabled him to give the settlers warning of approaching danger in time to allow them to take refuge in their blockhouses before the savages could attack them. Our informant refers to one of these instances when the news of Hull's surrender came like a thunderbolt upon the frontier. Large bands of Indians and British were destroying everything before them, murdering defenseless women and children, and even blockhouses were not always a sufficient protection. At this time, Johnny traveled day and night, warning the people of approaching danger. He visited every cabin and delivered this message. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has anointed me to blow the trumpet in the wilderness and sound the alarm in the forest. For behold, the tribes of the heathen are round your doors, and devouring flame followeth after them. The aged man who narrated this incident said that he could feel even now the thrill that was caused by the prophetic announcement and the wild-looking herald of danger, who will rouse the family on the bright moonlit night with his piercing voice. Refusing all offers of food and denying himself a moment's rest, he traversed the border day and night until he had warned every settler of the approaching peril. His diet was as meager as his clothing. He believed it to be a sin to kill any creature for food, and thought it was necessary for human sustenance was produced by the soil. He was also a stupendous opponent of the waste of food, and on one occasion, approaching a log cabin, he observed some fragments of bread floating upon the surface of a bucket of slops that was intended for the pigs. He immediately fished them out, and then the housewife expressed her astonishment, and he told her that it was the abuse of the gifts of a merciful God to allow the smallest quantity of anything that was designed to supply the wants of mankind to be diverted from its purpose. In this instance, as in his whole life, his peculiar religious ideas of Johnny Appleseed were exemplified. He was the most earnest disciple of the faith taught by Emmanuel Swedenborg, and himself claimed to have frequent conversations with angels and spirits. Two of the latter, of the feminine gender, he assented, had revealed to him that they were to be wives of the future state if he abstained from matrimonial alliance on the earth. He entertained a profound reverence for his revelations of the Swedish seer, and always carried a few volumes with him. There he was very anxious she should read by everyone, and he probably was not the only keeper of the wilderness of Ohio, but as he had no tract society to furnish him supplies, he certainly devised an original method of multiplying one book into a number. He divided his books into several pieces, leaving a portion of the log cabin and subsequent visit furnishing another fragment, and continuing his process as diligently as though the work had been published in serial numbers. By this plan, he was able to furnish reading for several people at the same time out of one book. But it must have been a difficult undertaking for some nearly illiterate backwoodsman to endeavor to comprehend Swedenborg or the backward course of reading. When the first installment appeared, he had the last fraction of the volume. Johnny's faith in Swedenborg's works was so reverential as almost to be superstitious. He was once asked if, traveling barefooted through the forests abounding with venomous reptiles, he was not afraid of being bitten. With his peculiar smile, he drew his book from his bosom and said, "This book is an infallible protection against all danger here and hereafter." It was his custom, when he had been welcomed into some hospitable log house after a weary day of journeying, to lie down on the puncheon floor, and after inquiring if his auditors would hear some news brought from heaven, produce his few tattered books, among which were the New Testament, and read and expound until his uncultivated hearers would catch the spirit and glow in his enthusiasm, while they scarcely comprehended his language. The lady who knew him in his later years writes the following terms of one of the domiciliary readings of poor sacrificing Johnny Appleseed. "I can hear him read now, just as he did that summer day, when we were busy putting upstairs, and he lay near the door, his voice rising denunciatory and thrilling, strong and loud as a roar of wind in the waves, and soft and soothingly as the balmy airs that quivered in morning glory leaves around his gray beard. He was a strange eloquence at times, and he was undoubtedly a man of genius." What a scene presented to our imagination! The interior of a primitive cabin, the wide, open fireplace, a few sticks are burning beneath the iron pot which the evening meal was cooking. Around the fireplace, an attentive group, composed of the sturdier pioneer and his wife and children, listening to a reverential awe to the news right fresh from heaven. And reclining on the floor, clad in rags, but with his gray hairs glorified in the beams of the setting sun that fled through the open door, and the unchinked logs of the humble building, this poor wanderer, with the gift of genius and eloquence, He believes with the faith of the apostles and martyrs that God has appointed him on a mission in wilderness to preach the gospel of love, to plant apple seeds and shall produce orchards for the benefit of men and women and little children whom he has never seen. If there is a sublimer faith or a more genuine eloquence in richly decorated cathedrals and under-brocade investments, it would be worth a long journey to find it. Next to his advocacy of his peculiar religious ideas, his enthusiasm for the cultivation of apple trees in what he termed the only proper way, that is, from the seed, was the absorbing object of his life. Upon this, as upon religion, he was eloquent in his appeals. He would describe the growing and ripening fruit of such a rare and beautiful gift of the Almighty with words that became pictures, so his hearers could almost see the manifold forms of beauty present before them. In his eloquence on the subject, as well as his actual labors in planting nurseries, the country over which he traveled for so many years was largely indebted to its numerous orchards. But he denounced the absolute wickedness of all the vices of pruning and grafting, and he would speak to the act of cutting a tree as if it were cruel inflicting upon a sentient being. Not only is he entitled to the fame of being the earliest cultivator of the frontiers, but in the work of protecting animals from abuse and suffering, he proceeded, while in his smaller field he equaled the zeal of good Mr. Burke. Whenever Johnny saw an apple abused or heard of it, he would purchase it and give it to the more humane settler, on condition that it would be kindly treated and properly cared for. It frequently happened that the long journey into the wilderness was caused a few settlers to be encumbered with the lame or broken-down horses, but were turned loose to die. In the autumn, Johnny would make such a diligent search for such animals. Gathering them up, he would bargain for their food and shelter until next spring. Then he would lead them away to a good pasture for the summer. If they recovered so as a capable working, he would never sell them. He would lend them or give them away, stipulating for their good usage. His conception of an absolute sin of inflicting pain or death upon any creature was not limited to the higher forms of animal life, but everything that had being to him, in the fact of its life, endowed with such divine essence that to never destroy it was to inflict an injury upon some atom of divinity. No Brahmin could be more concerned for the preservation of insect life, and the only occasion in which he destroyed a venomous reptile was the source of long regret, to which he never referred without manifesting sadness. He had elected a suitable place for planting apple trees on a small prairie, and in order to prepare the ground he was mowing the long grass, and he was bitten by a rattlesnake. Describing the event, he sighed heavily and said, "Poor fellow, he only just touched me, when I, in the heat of my ungodly passion, put the heel of my scythe into him, and went away. Some time after it I went back, and there lay the poor fellow dead." Numerous anecdotes bearing upon his respect for every form of life were preserved, and formed the staple of pioneer reflections. On one occasion, a cool autumnal night, Johnny, who always camped out in preference of sleeping in a house, had built a fire near he intended to pass the night. He noticed that the blaze attracted large numbers of mosquitoes, many of whom flew too near the fire and burned. He immediately brought water and quenched the fire, accounting for his conduct afterwards, saying, "God forbid that I should build a fire for my comfort, which should be the means of destroying any of his creatures." At another time he removed the fire he had built near a hollow log, and slept in the snow, because he found that the log contained a bear and her cubs, whom he said he did not wish to disturb. And this unwillingness to inflict pain was equally strong when he was the sufferer of it, as the following will show. Johnny had been assisting some settlers to make a road through the woods, and in the course of their work they accidentally destroyed a hornet's nest. One of the angry insects soon found a lodgment under Johnny's coffee-sack cloak, and although it stung him repeatedly, he removed it with the greatest gentleness. The men who were present laughingly asked him why he did not kill it, to which he gravely replied, "It would not be right to kill the poor thing, for it did not intend to hurt me." Theoretically, he was as methodical in matters of business as any merchant. In addition to their picturesqueness, the locations of his nurseries were all fixed with a view of the probable demand for the trees by the time they had attained sufficient growth for transplanting. He would give them away to those who could not pay for them. Generally, however, he sold them for clothing or supply of meal for them. but he preferred to receive a note payable at some indefinite period. When this was accomplished, he seemed to think of the transaction as completely business-like. But if the giver of the note did not attend to his payments, the holder of it never troubled himself about his collection. His expenses for food and clothing were so very limited that, notwithstanding his freedom in the Ara Sac James, he was frequently in possession of more money than he cared to keep. It was quickly disposed of for wintering infirm horses, or given to some poor family whom the ague had prostrated, and the accidents of border life had perished. In a single instance only, he is known to have invested his surplus means in the purchase of land, having received a deed from Alexander Findlay of Mohawken Township, Ashland County, Ohio, for a part of the southwest quarter of the section of 26. But with his customary indifference matters of value, Johnny failed to record the deed and lost it. Only a few years ago, the property was in litigation. We must not leave the reader under the impression that this man's life, so full of hardship and perils, was a gloomy or unhappy one. There is an element of human pride in all martyrdom, which, if it does not soften the pains, stimulates a power of endurance. Johnny's life was made serenely happy by the conviction that he was living like the primitive Christians. Nor was he devoid of a keen humor, to which he occasionally gave vent, as following show. Toward the latter part of Johnny's career in Ohio, an itinerary missionary found his way into the village of Mansfield and preached to an open-air congregation. The discourse was tediously lengthy and necessarily severe on the sin of extravagance, which was beginning to manifest itself among the pioneers with the occasional indulgence of carnal varieties of calico and store tea. There was a good deal of parasitic leaven on the preacher, who was frequently emphasized his discourse by the inquiry, where now is a man who, like the primitive Christians, is traveling to heaven barefooted and clad in coarse raiment? When this interrogation had been repeated beyond all reasonable endurance, Johnny rose from the log on which he was reclining, and in advance of the speaker, he placed one of his bare feet on the stump which serves as pulpit, and pointing to his coffee-sack garment, he quietly said, "Well, here's your primitive Christian." The well-clothed missionary hesitated and stammered, and dismissed the congregation. This pet antithesis was destroyed by Johnny's personal appearance, which was far more primitive than the preacher cared to copy. Some of the pioneers were disposed to think that Johnny's humor was the cause of extensive practical joke, but it is generally conceded now that the widespread annoyance was really the result of his belief that the offensively odoured weed known in the West, dog fennel, but more generally styled mayweed, possessed valuable antimalarial virtues. He procured some seeds from plants in Pennsylvania and sowed them in the vicinity of every house in the region of his travels. The consequence was a successive flourishing of crops of weeds spread over the whole county, and caused almost as much trouble as the disease it was intended to ward off. To this day, dog fennel, introduced by Johnny Appleseed, is one of the worst grievances of the Ohio farmers. In 1838, 37 years after his appearance on Licking Creek, Johnny noticed that civilization, wealth, and population were pressing into the wilderness of Ohio. Hitherto, he had kept easy in his advance in the way of settlement, but now towns and churches were making their appearance, and even at long intervals the stage driver's horn broke on the silence of the grand old forests, and he felt that his work was done in the region in which he had labored so long. He visited every house and took a solemn farewell of all the families. The little girls who had been delighted by the gifts and fragments of calico and ribbons had become the sober matrons, and the boys who had wandered with the ability to bear the pain caused by running needles into his flesh were heads of families. With parting words of admonition, he left them, and turned his steps steadily toward the setting sun. During the succeeding 9 years, he pursued his eccentric avocation to the western border of Ohio and Indiana. In the summer of 1847, when his labors had literally borne the fruit of over 100,000 square miles of territory, at the close of a warm day, after traveling 20 miles, he entered the house of a settler in Allen County, Indiana, and was, as usual, warmly welcomed. He declined to eat with the family, but accepted some bread and milk, which he partook in sitting on the doorstep and gazing on the setting sun. Later in the evening, he delivered his news right fresh from heaven, reading the beach lights. Declining other accommodations, he slept, as usual, on the floor. In the early morning, he was found with his features all aglow with supernatural light, his body so near death that his tongue refused the office. The physician, who was hastily summoned, pronounced him dying, and added that he had never seen a man in so placid state of approaching death. At 72 years of age, 46 of which had been devoted to self-imposed mission, he ripened into death as natural and beautiful as the seeds of his own planting growth into fiber and bud and blossom of nature's fruit. Thus died one of the memorable men of pioneer times, who never inflicted pain or knew an enemy, a man of strange habits, in whom there dwelt a comprehension and love had reached with one hand downward in the lowest forms of life, and with the other upward to the very throne of God. The laboring, self-denying benefactor of his race, homeless, solitary, and ragged, he trod the thorny earth with bare and bleeding feet, intent only upon making the wilderness fruitful. Now no man knoweth of his sojourn, but his deeds will live in the fragrance of the apple blossoms he has loved so well, and the story of his life, however crudely narrated, will be a perpetual proof that true heroism, pure benevolence, and noble virtues and deeds that deserve immortality may be found under the meanest apparel, far from the gilded halls and towering spires. Seems like a good place to close. Also, it's a section. Now, see if we can find someone to raid. Let's see who's on. Let's see, her Griffin is on. Yeah, let's raid her. Thank you, everyone, for coming by. And hopefully I will see people back for fairy tales tomorrow, because we're doing more Hunch Missionaries. So, pick your red message, and I will hopefully see you around. I don't know.